Hello and welcome to our deep dive series as we continue to do the legwork for you so you don't have to, as we look at all 32 NFL teams ahead of the season. Just a reminder that when we are looking at this, we're looking at them from a redraft PPR perspective. And today we are looking at the Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, who come off the back of that incredible win against the Chiefs in last year's Super Bowl. And let's start straight away, as we always do, Mark, with our quarterback. Maybe not getting as much love as he deserves in the offseason. I don't know if that's fair, but Jalen Hurts, I've seen him down at the list in some quarterback rankings, but I think you're about to give him some love.
I think I've seen in a couple of places people talk about name fatigue, and I think that's probably the case with Jalen Hurts. I think he's a player that people were very negative on at the start of his career. He's not an elite passer. We know that he's not very quarterbacky, to quote an idiot from a couple of years ago, talking about Lamar Jackson. But he is just a locked-in top 5 fantasy quarterback. Now, we've spoken a lot back and forth, and we do when we're not recording as well, about where Joe Burrow fits in this. What's Jane Daniels going to look like this next year? For me, the thing that separates Jalen Hurts as being the third quarterback behind Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen is they are the only 3 that, if they play every game and everything goes as we expect it to, feel locked in that top 5. I think for the others, there's just a couple more questions. Could Joe Burrow, could Jane Daniels outperform Jalen Hurts this year? Absolutely, yes, they could. But it just feels safer taking Jalen Hurts to that point he's going. Last year, 11 touchdowns inside the 5-yard line. He had 51% of the Eagles' carries inside the 5. Second only to Kyren Williams when it comes to touchdowns. Add in a couple more. 14 rushing touchdowns overall. That seems a little bit, to be fair, like his baseline. So 2021 he had 10, 2022 he had 13, and 2023 he had 15 rushing touchdowns. So you feel locked in for a minimum of 60 points over the season just from his rushing touchdowns. The tush push remains. Everyone saw sense, and that was kept in. The idea of banning a rule just because you don't know how to stop it always seems a little bit of a sly way to go about getting your victory. No, the passing will, I think, possibly never be elite. I think we may be safe to say now, but the rushing gets it done for fantasy, and that's what we're here to talk about. So yeah, for me, he feels locked in as being a top 5 quarterback for fantasy this year, and that's why I've got him as my QB3 overall.
Yeah, I agree. I think Hurts is the Eagles' offense as a whole took a little bit of time to get going last season, but as the Super Bowl proved, they were absolutely incredible once they hit top speed. He's not in tier 1 alongside Jackson and Josh Allen. He's in the tier below. And QB3 is fair. You can make an argument for him. You can make an argument for Daniels and for Burrow. But Hurts, I wouldn't disagree with that projection of QB3. And if you're taking him early in a draft, good luck to you, because I think he will get you the numbers that you need.
Yeah, so he's going mid-round 4 at the minute, which is high for a quarterback. And I think the way we both draft, we tend to wait a little bit later for our quarterbacks, but that's our preference and how we like to draft. If Phil wants to take him mid-round 4, no issue with that whatsoever. I think it also needs to be remembered that the Eagles were so dominant in games last year, they were able to just hand it off to Saquoun and grind games out. Jalen Hurts didn't really have to go above and beyond. He missed a little bit of game time as well. So yeah, I'm feeling very confident about him coming to this season, and there's very little to kind of put me off that at this point.
There's arguably more to come from Hurts, which I think is quite exciting. Talking about quite exciting, you've just mentioned him. Let's move on to running back. Fairly solid season last season for this man.
He was all right, yeah. So looking at his projection, his finish last year of RB2. So that is all based on PPR scoring. So that is where Jahmyr Gibbs got the work done. Gibbs still only finished 7 points above Saquon in the overall rankings.
And didn't
Saquon
Gibbs
obviously
get like 50 odd points in week 18?
46 PPR points in the final week as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, he really leapfrogged it there. And Saquon, as a lot was spoke about at the time, was sat in order to kind
Saquon
of
was RB1. Sorry, Jimmy.
yeah. When
Yeah.
we're looking, but that was when we're looking 22.2 points a game. He was RB1 in points per game. The only reason I've got him down as being my RB2 this year is just I feel this is the year for Bijan. And it's a coin toss. But if I had to gamble on one of them, I would go Bijan this year. I think looking at his numbers last year. So 2002 rushing yards, 5.81 yards per carry, 13 touchdowns, 1 backwards hurdle. Adding to all of that as well, 33 receptions for just under 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns. That'll do. When that is the icing on the cake of the fantasy points is getting it, you'll take that. He had last season the most yards after contact for a running back since the NFL started tracking that as a data point back in 2016. He had 7 rushes of 40 yards or more. I'm going to keep it really, really simple. If you are drafting in slots 1 to 4 in your redraft leagues, Chase, Bijan, Jefferson, Barkley, any 4 of those you can make a complete valid case for. I don't think there is a right or wrong choice at this stage. Yeah, there will be by the end of the season, obviously. I don't think there is at this point. If you're in there, you take them at any place you want quite happily, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue with that. Saquon is, he must rue the day he left the Giants. It's been all downhill since then, hasn't it? But no, seriously, I think, can you make a case that last season was peak Saquon and there might be a slight drop off? I think you possibly could.
Yeah.
But in terms of, the competition at the top of the running back board, he will be there or thereabouts as long as he stays fit. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of Saquon, and I'd quite happily take him in one of those first 5 picks. He does. Well, can we describe the other running backs at Philadelphia as competition, or are they just names on the roster?
I'm going to describe them as there. They are there. Simple as that. So Will Shipley, AJ Dillon. I gave up on trying to bang the drum for AJ Dillon a long time ago. If we had Tom on as a Packers fan, I'm sure he would as well. In the one game that Saquon did, say yes, the Eagles were going through the motions, but Shipley or Gainwell at the point didn't really take hold of that. I'm only interested in either of these if Saquon misses substantial time. With Saquon and Hurts there ahead of them, they're not going to be relevant. And to be honest, I think if Saquon was out for a significant amount of time, I think the Eagles would work to bring someone better in to take over that RB role, to be honest. So at the time of recording, this is what the depth chart looks like. I don't see that changing as well. But yeah, I'm not worried about either. And I'm also not even going to think about drafting either of these unless I'm very, very deep in a best ball draft potentially.
Yeah, I don't think they're even going to have something like, like DFS value or anything like that. I just don't think they'll get the reps. But wide receiver, we get much more excited, don't we? And we'll start off with someone who I think is possibly, I don't know, is he a bit underrated? Is he somebody that kind of gets overshadowed by the likes of Chase, Jefferson, Lamb? But he's someone with elite talent.
Well, it's interesting. Is 16.7 points per game actually for him from a fantasy point of view is decent and matches years where he was a top 10 receiver. So he's not actually a long way from that. I think the problem was last year he missed a bit of time. That factored into it. His targets did go down last year. So 2023, 9.3 targets per game. 2024, 7.5. That's 30 targets over a season, that's a significant amount. As we said before, the Eagles had put games to bed. It was a case of let's run it, let's grind it out, let's go for those short gains, let's just go through the motions. AJ Brown excels when it comes to beating players downfield, and he simply didn't need to do that because the Eagles didn't need to play in that way. So 13 games was solid over that period of time. I think for me, my only question mark I have over Saquon is a positive when it comes to Brown and Smith as well. The Eagles' defense on paper isn't as solid as it was last year. Also, projected strength of schedule. They're in for a tricky one this year. A strength of schedule is what it is. We speak about this at this time of year. Maybe for your first couple of games, it's relevant. That changes as the season goes on. But there could be a need for the Eagles to pass more than they did last year this year, in which case Brown obviously stands to benefit from that. As I said, if the Eagles are involved in a couple of shootouts, AJ Brown is where the money is getting that ball downfield for me. His consistency wasn't great last year, it must be said, though. So wide receiver won 13.9% of games. He had no weeks as a wide receiver 2, and 55.6% of his games he was outside the wide receiver 3 conversation. You draft him, though, because he has the chance of being the wide receiver 1 on a week where other players in his range don't really, do they?
I like AJ Brown. There was a lot of rubbish last season with reading the book on the sidelines. he wasn't reading the book, but let's not go there.
He absolutely wasn't reading that book.
Let's not go there and question his attitude. And I think kind of post Super Bowl, I think he admitted himself that him and Jalen Hurts do butt heads quite a lot, but I think that's just part of kind of the kind of desire to win, which is not a bad thing at all. Wide receiver 10 is very fair because of the other competition for touchdowns, as you've already illustrated in Philadelphia. And if you look at like the best receiving core in the league, obviously Chase and Higgins is up there, but I think AJ Brown and Devonta Smith aren't that far behind, are they?
No, I do feel, though, that both are being drafted at their absolute ceiling. So current ADP for Brown is wide receiver 7. That is a little bit too much for me to be taking. And so that may well change as we get deeper into redraft season. That's just where it is at the moment. We're recording on, what's the date today? We're recording on the 8th of August. So it could change. But yeah, Devonta Smith as well, when it comes on to that, also feels like he's being drafted at ceiling. So he's current ADP of wide receiver 18. I have him as wide receiver 24 currently. Everything I've just said about AJ Brown, though, we can copy and paste for Devonta Smith. There's that same potential route to more targets this year. I imagine he'll get more targets and therefore more receptions this year. I just feel going in round 5, whereas AJ Brown's going in the middle of the second, he has a clearer route to being a value pick this year for me. I do think there is a world where Smith and Brown finish fantasy-wise potentially within a couple of spots of each other, and in which case, obviously, you'd rather have taken Devonta Smith. If Brown misses any time, though, Devonta Smith is the clear beneficiary of that. Like you say, if Chase misses time, Higgins clearly benefits. There are some rosters where it's a little bit more muddy who might get the targets, or they might be more spread out. Devonta Smith is the clear person who that's all going to. His range of outcomes last year were what was a little bit concerning, though. So he had 3 games under 7 points. We also had 4 over 20, including a 30-point week. But when you're drafting a wide receiver in round 5, that's baked into it, isn't it? That's kind of what you're expecting when you're taking a wide receiver there.
Yeah, Smith, like Higgins, is somebody with elite talent, and on a number of rosters, he is the wide receiver 1. I'd quite happily take him as a wide receiver 2, but I agree, also like Higgins, because of his talent and almost his name value, he is getting drafted at his absolute ceiling. So I do often miss out on him because he just goes a bit too high for my liking. But I think you make a great point that I wouldn't say AJ Brown is an absolutely nailed on wide receiver 1. I do think Devonta Smith could challenge him in that offense, but it's just such a crowded offense that there's a lot of targets to go around.
And that's why I'm not particularly interested in any of these 3 as well, further down the depth chart. If we're having those questions of, are AJ Brown and Devonta Smith going to get the volume? We've sort of tight end to speak about as well. I'm not drafting Dotson, Wilson, or Marshall Jr. at any point. There could be of interest if Brown or Smith go down, but to be honest, I think Dotson, I think we're kind of there with now. We've felt he's had routes to being successful before in Washington, it's just not come through. Terrace Marshall Jr., I'm bored with completely. I've got complete fatigue around him. I think if we saw Brown go down, I'm all in on Smith. If we saw Smith go down, I'm all in on Brown. I'd consider Goedert over all three of these as well. If it got to a point where I was considering Dotson, Wilson, and Marshall, I'm assuming there'll be someone I'm more interested in at a better cost on waivers, probably.
Yeah, out of those two, the only one that interests me slightly is Dotson. I think he would emerge as the wide receiver 3, but he won't get the targets to be relevant. And as you mentioned, I think the other target is the tight end Dallas Goedert, who is he's going to be more relevant than those three.
Yeah, missed a chunk of time in 2024. And when he was inconsistent. His targets were so varied. So in his games that he played, he had as low as 2 targets, as high as 10. And that was what was required of him in those games. And looking at the matchups as well, when you see, Sleep is very good at showing that projection of, is this a tight end friendly matchup, etc. There wasn't really correlation there as well. He averaged 5.2 targets per game. That's decent. I just think a tight end in a rush-heavy offense behind 2 really good receivers, that lacks appeal to me, and that's reflecting his ADP. So at the moment, tight end 14. So he's probably not going to be on waivers. I think tight end 14, there's enough people in a 12-team league will draft a backup tight end. If you are drafting Goedert, then it's like because you've got someone else as well, and you're going to make a choice between one of the two over the course of the game week, or you need to be active on waivers and be prepared to pivot if it's looking like a tough game, and also prepared to drop him if he's not doing the business and there is a better option out there.
Yeah, Goedert is somebody who won't be a consistent tight end, hence why you describe him as streamable. He'll have some great weeks, but I mean, at other times he will struggle. But that's the Eagles. That was quite a whistle-stop tour through the Eagles. It's kind of quite black and white in some areas.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on them as a whole? Do you think are they primed to go deep again and to run it back?
On paper, it's all there, isn't it? I mean, they've got 2 solid receivers. They've got an excellent quarterback, one of the best running backs who have ever done it. It is the step down on defense that I think we will see coming, but can they adjust that on offense? It's certainly possible. I think division-wise, they're probably going to be in for a tougher deal from the Commanders this year. Giants, I don't think they're especially worried about. I think they're probably safe there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to throw the Cowboys into the mix as well. They're a playoff team, absolutely. And once they're in the playoffs, everyone's in with a chance. And if Saquon is like Saquon was last year, if AJ Brown and Devonta Smith can continue to build on as well, they're certainly in the conversation of Super Bowl targeting teams, aren't they?
I think that they will win their division quite comfortably. I do respect the Commanders, who I think are a playoff team, but I think the Eagles are slightly better in all areas. And yeah, the Giants are also Rams, and the Cowboys will just cowboy again, won't they? So I think they're guaranteed playoffs, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them back in the Super Bowl. I just think the way they dismantled the Chiefs last year was just so phenomenal, wasn't it? So
such a pleasure to watch.
It was a pleasure to watch. Before we go, just a reminder to like, share, and subscribe. That would be wonderful. We have our 31 other deep dives ready to go for you to have a look at, and we still have plenty of time before the season starts for you to get your fantasy fix and get ahead of your fantasy teammates. But that's enough on the Eagles. Goodbye from me and Mark. And Malcolm, take us home.
You have been listening to Pestell and Ed of TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Instagram and Twitter.